Thank you guys for being here. This is, as you know, as we told you this morning, this is our last one of these, and it looks as though it's way too pretty of an evening to be at church because our crowd has dwindled, and it's just a gorgeous evening out, and so I'm sure that everybody's out probably praying for us, right? Isn't that what you guys just assume, that they're at home praying and interceding, probably fasting even on our behalf, that we would be spiritually enriched this evening. And I'm grateful for their ministry to us. So tonight, as we kind of walk into the thing that I did not really get to cover at all today, that I'm gonna kind of briefly hit before we do some questions, is the practicals. Let me walk through these quickly. If there's anything as I walk through these that you want to say, let me put these over here where you can see them as well. If you want to say anything about any of those, you certainly take time to do that. Okay, so first one I said was transfer. You still can't read it. Transfer ownership. This is a principle that we teach in stewardship messages and things of that nature, that the things that God has entrusted to us, one of the greatest things that we can do in how we take care of things is to transfer ownership, meaning that recognizing everything that's in my care really ultimately belongs to Him. There's nothing, this is a biblical example, there's nothing that I have, the scripture says, that I did not receive. Okay, so it's all a gift. Well, if we approach our vehicles that way, when my vehicle breaks down, then I can tell the Lord, hey, you got a broke truck, and if you want it fixed, you can fix it, and it's His. It's all, I don't have to worry about that stuff. Well, when we do that with our children, we understand that I have them for a short season. Okay, I'll be their daddy their whole life, but I only have them in my care a short season. God has them their whole life. And so one of the things that we do early, and when they're teenagers, you do often, is remind God that they're His. Okay, what's the I guess the outcropping of that is I don't have to sit and worry about my kids constantly. One of the things that is I find common in talking with parents is that they worry constantly about their kids. This happens starting whenever they're little bitty, man. We're worried about whether they're developing right, and we're worried about whether or not that, you know, they get on the right T-ball league, and then we're worried, and it just escalates throughout their life, and it just turns into bigger issues as they get older, right, and more expensive issues. But we just worry. Listen, you can't add a single day to their life by worrying. Now, you can drive them nuts, and you can drive yourself nuts worrying, but you're just not adding anything to their life by worrying about them. So transfer ownership. The day you bring them into this world, just to remind yourself, you're not really reminding God, He already knows. Hey, they belong to the Lord. And while I have them, I'm going to invest in them, pour myself into them, but ultimately they belong to God. Anything you need to say there? Okay, be authentic. We talked about that this morning. That one kind of speaks for itself, but here again, talking about parenting, it's so critical that if they sense that mom and dad are radically different around Christians versus non-Christians, or radically different in public versus at home, man, they just pick it up. They really do. So being the real deal is very, very important. Consistency, we talked about that this morning briefly. This one's a big one, and I think even more so when they're younger than older, but it doesn't mean you can let up on it as they become teenagers. But certainly whenever they are younger, when mom and dad says no about something, it's critical that no means no, and you don't spend your life. I know none of you would ever do this, but you've probably been around parents that do it, that they just are in a constant threat mode. I'm going to whoop you, or I'm going to ground you, or I'm going to whatever you, and they never do it. Y'all ever notice that? Your kids are not dumb. Somebody needs to hear that, okay? They are not dumb. And they figure out real quick whether or not mom and dad, were you volunteering, sis? Oh, okay. they figure out real quick whether or not mom and dad mean business, right? And so that whole consistency thing is really important. I said this morning. You need to be predictable, and predictable is an okay thing in parenting. They need to know where your limits are.
I think along with that being consistent, though, they also need to know that mom and dad are on the same team.
Yeah.
Because it does no good to be for one parent to be consistent and the other parent to not be consistent. You need to make a pact that I'm for him, even though you don't maybe not agree at times. Don't do that disagreeing in front of that child, because they'll play you against each other.
Yeah.
They're too smart.
Very, very good. And I put in here to go along with what she just said. During times of peace, agree with your spouse on a plan. And what I meant by that was she and I are probably very typical as what I see in most couples. We're very different in our approach to discipline and those kinds of things. You have to find those times of peace where you can talk about it and agree upon what you're going to do in regards to an issue with a child, or whether that be everyday practices. But at the end of the day, they have to understand, meaning your children, that mom and dad are inseparable. Listen, they are manipulators. Please get that one, okay? They will manipulate you, and they will use you, and they will pit you against one another, okay? They are politicians in your home, okay? And so they just know how to work the system. And so it's very important that you back one another up in your approach to that. I said discipline them and start early. This is critical. There's so many that want to wait to bring about discipline whenever their kids are 12 or 13 years old, and you're about 12 or 13 years behind. You really got to start whenever they are small. And again, because of the climate in which we live, I get that. And even in just bringing up the idea of discipline, people are all over the board on this issue. And let me say this while I'm here. I am just so you know my heart, I am grieved over where we are as a society, that we can't have deep discussions over controversial things. We really can't. And we're just in a place anymore that things like this, or things like I brought up one that was really controversial right now over spousal abuse. It can't really even be discussed without it just immediately becoming this polarizing thing. You can't ask questions about it, or it's immediately, oh, well, you think that women ought to be hit. No, not at all. The furthest thing from the truth. But I'm only saying this because I really want to give an encouragement to you and a caution to you. The encouragement is don't disengage from dialogue with people over hard issues, okay? But I'd also give caution in the sense that you be extra cautious on how you dialogue on social media, or really any electronic format. And here's why. The thing that you can't get off of text and email, Facebook, the tweet, any of that, what you can't get is you can't get emotion. And what you'll always want to do is read. Now, you ever got one of these texts where somebody says something to you and you read emotion into it that wasn't there? Y'all been there, right? And that's why it's a terrible form of, we all use it, right? But it's really a terrible form of communication in that regard, that if you're a little bit miffed, you'll always read into that. Well, why is she being so edgy? Or why is he being a jerk? Well, he's not, or she's not. All they did was just said, K. Yeah, she gets after me because I write K. I'm like, texting is supposed to be short, so K is the best response, just K. All right. So anyway, but stay engaged, okay? I don't want us to become a people that go and put our head in the sand on tough issues. All right, so we've got to dialogue about it somewhere, it just grieves me that not a lot of healthy dialogue is going on about tough things. Race is another one. Pastor Ben and I have been in some conversations with some guys here recently over race issues, and here again, I have a lot of concerns over this social, what's the word I'm looking for? Social justice movement that is going on, from whether that be the Me Too movement to the issues of race. I've got a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about all of those movements, even though there's nothing racist about me. I don't think you ought to abuse your wife. And so I'm for all the good things, but I have questions about it. And the moment you ask questions in the wrong setting, immediately you're labeled as a racist wife beater. and I think that's tragic. I really, really do. And I get kind of, you pray for me and pray for her that she doesn't kill me over it, because I get sucked into some of it. I get to thinking, well, if I could just dialogue a little bit with them, I can fix them. And you can't fix stupid, I'm finding out. And there's just a lot of stupid out there, amen? And so anyway, I'm just always that guy. I think dialogue is really healthy, if it's healthy dialogue, and most of it just probably not. So, where we at? I said stop worrying about them. We covered that. Oh, be active in their lives, but remember it's theirs. Really, really common deal here again that parents spend. He's swapping out with you there. That parents spend their kids' lives living through them, and just give you some really strong caution not to do it. Because here's what I can say for both of us. We have dreams and ideas for our kids, but at the end of the day, they got to go follow their own. And sometimes that's hard because they don't go the direction you want them to go, especially as they're getting older and moving out of your home and that kind of thing. And some of you are there, some of you are past that, some of you are a long way from that. But that's a challenging aspect of parenting, is letting them chart their own path. Go ahead.
I think this also applies to, as they grow into teenage years, sometimes we as parents, mama bears especially, want to go fight the battles for them. And a lot of times mama bears and papa bears need to step back and let them fight their own battles until it gets to a dangerous point, because that's how they learn to grow in their faith, as well as, you can give godly encouragement in those times, but ultimately that's their life, and they've got to learn how to maneuver through those hard times. You can't fix every problem for them. And I'm learning that now, still. I'm walking through that right now, so.
She thinks she can go slap somebody and it's all fixed, and it just don't
I
work
would
that way.
much prefer that most of the time.
Okay. Blended families, quit saying mine and yours. This is a pretty critical thing we see with families that have blended, that I brought mine and you brought yours, and you got to get rid of that vocabulary, because it continues to drive a wedge in the family. They're ours, period. They may not live with us every week or every weekend, but they're still ours. Why? Because that's the family unit. The family unit is a whole. It's not mine versus yours. And so that language, by the way, matters, guys. This is really important. It matters. And if it doesn't matter to you, I promise you it'll matter to your kids. Okay? Because they are ultimately the ones, whenever we dealing with the whole split families and stuff, that struggle most often. Teach them to pursue God's will, and we talked about that this morning. It's not, and we're not slamming the American dream. We're just saying that God's design for them doesn't necessarily always fit in that whole American dream ideology. And then the make home a fun place to be. I think I could talk all night on it. I'm not going to, but it may be one of the most important things that I could say to you in your quest in parenting is home needs to be as enjoyable a place to hang out as it possibly can be. Is there going to be tension at times? Sure. You can't put more than one person in. I think there'd be, if it's just me, I think there'd be tension eventually. I'd be sick of me and go argue the mirror. I just would. But so it's not that we're looking for this tension-free home, that it's this no argument space. You know, we're really trying to be realistic, but also at the same time is there's value in teaching your kids how to navigate through challenges like, you know, arguments or disagreements and things of that nature. But if home is just constantly this tense place, they will eventually get to this place where they start looking for reasons to be away from home just to get out of the pressure cooker. Home shouldn't be a pressure cooker. Home shouldn't be this place to where they're constantly walking on eggshells around you, or not wanting to set you off as a mom or a dad, or you as a couple. And so you have to be very intent. That's not just going to happen automatically. You got to be intentional about that. We want it to be that place. I'm just convinced that if home is that place of enjoyment, that place of peace and harmony, when they grow up and they have your grandbabies, they're going to come a whole lot nearer to coming back home when home was an enjoyable place than it was if it's just that tense, man, gosh, don't set dad off today, you know, kind of thing. And so you've got to, you know, be strategic about dealing with that. What are you laughing for? Okay, that's enough of those. Let's deal with some questions. Here's a few that we have in. As the spiritual leader in your home, name a time when you had to be tough and tender at the same time. I'm usually just tender. Is that how he's going to say that?
You complete
you take
me.
that one.
I was going to say you complete me.
I'm tough, you're tender.
Tender.
So
He
there
yells
you
out
are.
and I hug him.
It takes both of us. Well, you know, okay, so let's do it this way. I think, and I won't get into specifics with it, but I will say there's been some times where in parenting, when one of your kids have broken the rules, okay, and by the way, you need rules. Rules are a good thing, and it's okay. There needs to be expectations. They break them. One of the things that I think that you've got to watch is, especially if you are prone to anger issues, you got to watch to keep that tempered and not bring about discipline or consequences out of your anger. It needs to happen as a result of, no, you broke the rules, and here's why. And there's just been some times I could take you back to some moments where, you know, probably with everyone, certainly with every one of my kids, where, hey, you broke the rules. Let's sit down and talk about this. This is why you're getting ready to experience this. I don't like to have to discipline them. I don't think any parent likes. I mean, I guess every once in a while it's a little bit fun, but anyway, I'm teasing. You don't enjoy it, okay? But there's a toughness of that you love them enough to say, hey, I got to do this, okay? So like, for instance, at our house, one of the things that's effective is removing electronics from their life. They just don't think that they can function without those things. And if you take cell phones and game things and TV and all that stuff away from them. Well, what's interesting about that, and we've talked about this, is it's inconvenient for us now that we take the cell phone away. It's like, we need to get in touch with you, and so it's there's all that you have to balance, but there's still, I think, that place where rather than just being the lawgiver, nope, you broke it, here it is. Talk through that stuff. And I think that's more of that tenderness of what the Spirit of God does with us whenever He convicts us of sin. He never does it in such a way as to shame us into a place of, oh, you worthless, whatever. But rather it's, hey, here's what's wrong, and let me show you how to make this right. Let me show you how to walk in a better path. And I think that's that balance of toughness and tender. Tough, there's consequences. Tender, here's a better way to go at this. Let's do something to avoid walking back into this again. Because here's what we all know about ourselves, or we should know about ourselves. We have a tendency to repeat stupidity, right? We have a tendency to go back. And what I find with most Christians is that they struggle. If you've been saved 20 years, probably still struggling with some of the exact same issues 20 years in as you did on day one. I find that with most people. So we have a tendency to come back and repeat. Well, the things that help us to break that cycle is consequences in that. And so as a loving parent, you have to be firm, you have to be tough, and even at times when it inconveniences you, to enact those tough consequences. Yeah.
I was going to pretty much say the same thing. There's been times, even when our kids were little, that their brokenness, they come to you broken for something that they did, and you just want to forgive them immediately, but there's always consequences. There's always consequences for our sin. So those consequences still need to apply even when they're little. I mean, it gets even worse as they get older. We had walked through some stuff with our son, our oldest son, and, our anger was there, so we had to step back and say, okay, we can't handle this right now, until we prayed about it. And then we pray about it, we go to him, he's broken over his sin, but you still have consequences. There still has to be consequences, because that's the picture of God in our life. There has to be a consequence for our sin. Most of the time, there has to be a consequence.
Sometimes
for our sin.
we shock them with grace.
Yeah, sometimes you have to shock them with grace.
No consequences this time.
But ultimately, that's where you have to step back and say, okay, God, you've got to lead me through this, because I can't do this on my own. This has to be your Spirit teaching me how to parent my child. Because there's times, I'm just telling you, it will happen. There's times that your flesh wants to take over and just not spare the rod at all, just beat them. That's those times when you don't let anger control you. You let the Spirit of the Lord lead you in that.
So sometimes maybe need to go into parental timeout before you enact your righteous indignation toward them. Okay.
And I can probably tell you that those parental times outs are when your child is on the edge of their bed thinking, what in the world are they going to do to me?
Wasn't that always the worst? And did you ever have mom and dad send you to your room and I'll be in to deal with you later? That is the worst, right? I've got to wait on what's coming. My goodness. Yeah, mine was always, as a kid, my mom passed so much of it over to dad, and it was always, you wait till your dad gets home. Oh my goodness. I was like, Mom, please beat us. Mom, please, you discipline us. Because she just couldn't. She didn't have no skills at it whatsoever. And so she would offer, you just wait till your dad gets home. Don't you love us? Okay, so here's another one. What should a man do when he has a wife who won't cook his favorite? No, that's not what it says. When he has a wife who won't follow her husband's leading. You take that first. Yeah. What should a man do when his wife won't follow his leading? What do you think he ought to do about that?
I would say pray for her first and foremost, but demonstrate the love of Christ through your life. Actions speak sometimes greater than words. I don't know.
Go to Twitter?
No, goodness, no. I think, love her. Continue to love her as Christ loved the church. Do things for her to show her that you love Christ first and foremost, and pray for her and demonstrate those things in love to her. And hopefully by those things you will win her heart to Christ.
Good. To just go in partnership with that, here's what I'd say. And I think I believe it goes both directions. You can't fix her. You just can't. There is a common myth among married couples, and I'd say it exists in all fairness. It's not a sexist statement, so don't tweet on me here. But it exists, I think, more with women than it does men, that really have this idea that I can change him once I marry him. And I tell couples as they are doing premarital counseling, if you're not satisfied at this point with each other, you better put the brakes on right now. Because the common thing, especially like I said with girls, that once I get a ring on his finger, I can calm him, tame him, turn him. No, it just doesn't work that way. I mean, he is who he is, and she is who she is. And so now come into the marriage, and the context of the question is as a husband, if I'm leading and she's not following, what do I do? Number one, understand at the end of the day, I can't fix her, I can't change her, and so I can't spend all my time focused on what I can't change. So then what do you do, preacher? Focus on what you can change. What can you change? You. That at the end of the day, that's what makes marriage good, is when you focus on what you can change. But let's go back into all of your marriages, all of your struggles, all of your strife. What was most of your focus on? Everything that you can't change. It's always on think about it, right? You're frustrated about them because of something that they did or did not do. Man, it's so much of a healthier approach that sure, she may be disappointing me, but the greatest way for me to deal with that is dealing with me, okay? And saying, no, I need to be a better servant leader in the home. I need to address this from within, not just, without. And that goes both directions. Ladies, if your husband is not in that place, maybe he's not leading like he should. Then how do you do that? Do you nag him to death? You ought to be. No, absolutely not. You focus on yourself. Focus on being that virtuous woman that we read about in Proverbs 31. Focus on the fact that you can affect you. And don't, by the way, also don't underestimate or undervalue how God will use that in the life of your spouse. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that it's going to change tomorrow either. Okay, so if I could answer that question with one word, is that word right there, is patience. And I just don't even like to even say that word, much less exercise that word. But it really matters here is patience, that you've got to, and again, by the way, if you're in it for the long haul and this is a lifelong relationship, you can exercise patience. If you're only seeing marriage as this temporal 2-3 year thing, my goodness, there's no need for patience. Who's got time for patience in a 2-3 year relationship? But I'm giving my whole life to her. And if she's not where I want her to be, I can flat be patient and helping to get her there. How do I do it? Get me there. Focus on me. And you say, well, what if all the issues with her? Or if you flip that, if it's with him? I promise you there's some work you can do on yourself. I promise, always, every time, there's some things that you can do to help the situation, okay? Anything you need to say there?
The Holy Spirit, let the Holy Spirit work through you, because the power of the Holy Spirit is there working. Whether sometimes we don't see it, but we've got to remember that we've got someone bigger working on the issue that's more powerful than we are.
Very good. How would you advise, here's another question, how would you advise a couple, both believers, yet spiritually mismatched? In other words, one wants to grow and the other one wants to drift or be stagnant. How would you advise them? Babs? Yeah, I think this was directed for you to answer. That's the way I'm reading it. I mean, yeah. How would you advise that couple? What would you say to them? Well, it says, how would you advise a couple? They're both believers, yet they're spiritually mismatched. In other words, one wants to grow, the other one wants to drift or be stagnant.
Well, we're not supposed to drift or be stagnant, so I would advise them, the Bible tells us to grow and that we need to walk in the ways of the Lord.
Yeah, but only one of them wants to. So what do you say? Only one of them's interested in growing.
would still say the same thing.
Okay, so, but one of them is doing it. What do you say to the one that is growing? No, I'm asking. I want to get to the heart of this question. I don't think you're getting to the heart of it here, because they're wanting to know how do you obviously they both know they should. Yes. One just don't want to. So now as you're counseling that couple, what do you say to them?
I would say, what is the heart of the issue? Why do you think you don't need to grow in the Lord? And I don't know what I would do. I'm going to send them to my pastor.
Terrible answer. Terrible answer. I would say send them to the student pastor. Brooke can fix them. So here's how I would handle that. I would come back to a little bit of what I had just dealt with. So if you are the one who is wanting to grow and you're married to one that is not, don't underestimate the power of the Spirit of God working through you, of your spouse seeing you growing. The Christian life really, honestly, is designed to be a very attractive thing. Somebody that's in the Word, in prayer, walking with Jesus. We shouldn't be repelling people. We should be attracting people. That same thing happens in your home. And so and by the way, here's the stinky part of this. Okay, if we can just be real. Stinky part of this is sometimes the way that God uses us to attract others is through our trials and how we deal with them. I wish it weren't that way. I wish it was always whoever's walking with Jesus has more money, and everybody loves them, and it's not always that way. But the truth is trials are no respecter of persons, right? Everybody deals with them, and their stark contrast should be with how those filled with the Spirit deal with difficulties, frustrations, pain, all that kind of thing, versus those who are not walking with the Lord. And again, this is the context of two believers. It's just that one's growing, one's not. So it's not believer versus unbeliever, okay? And it may just be that as I'm going through my difficulty and I'm the one wanting to grow and she's not, okay, that she could look and see, my goodness, he has got some peace about him. He's got joy about him walking through that is just absolutely absent in my life. We think that works. Matter of fact, we know that works in every other relationship in life. Why wouldn't it work right there in your own home where they're around you more than anybody else in their life? Okay, so just I would just to encourage the one that's wanting to grow, don't devalue your walk with Jesus and the power that it has. And by the way, it also will not come, you're not going to turn that one by, again, nagging. Sometimes we're just prone to, pick at them. Well, I just love the Lord. I've been in prayer for the last half hour. How about you, Satan? And so we really can't shame them into walking with Jesus, right? You don't do that at work, or you shouldn't, by the way. If you are, quit. And so the same spiritual tact that you would use with a friend, you should be deploying in your home. And sometimes that we miss that. Okay, so let's flip the script. This is much more common because I was using it as though I'm the good one, but that's not the common scenario. The common scenario is she's the good one and I'm the bad one, all right? But what also is common is that you ladies feel like that if I just tell him often enough that he's failing, then he'll shape up and stop being such a loser. It just doesn't work. Please hear me. It just doesn't work. Pointing out his failures, his insufficiencies, what he's not doing. I just don't know many guys, honestly. And I've dealt with a lot of men over the years. I found very few of them that just said, you know what, really, the fact that I discovered through her that I'm a loser has really what helped turn my life and masculinity around. I'm a better leader today because I was a loser yesterday. It doesn't fly. But yet still, you girls will be prone to lean that direction of, I just need to point out his faults. Nobody else is, okay? Don't do it. Just don't get sucked into that. So what do? Everything we've been talking about. Focus on you, okay? Words of affirmation matter. So find those things that you can help build bridges with rather than destroy and tear them down. Find things that you can encourage them on. And again, I'm not talking about not challenging each other, not pushing each other, and in an encouraging way. We can do that. But the whole they just don't know how much they're failing without me telling. They just don't go down that road. It doesn't help. Okay? Anything you want to say on that one?
Good job.
Touche. Or as Siri used to say, tauche. Yeah, Siri, on your phone, if you type it in, she used to say tauche. That's how she says. She's corrected it now. It's touche. But anyway, not that any of you cared about that. You okay? Squirrel. What counsel would you give on moving adult children out of the nest? Kick them out. Do it. Yeah, we're for it. We're not against it. Okay. Listen, I think one of the things that is important with this is communication. Communication that starts early in regards to when you're wanting them out. What doesn't work well is waking them up that morning and saying today's the day, and mentioning it hey, I've already packed your stuff, sweetie. You're homeless. That's not going to go well. Funny story. My brother, who's an incredibly intelligent human being. He really is. He's a very, very smart guy in regards to book learning. He's got one of these photographic memories. It just kind of sickens me that he can read anything and just retains it. And I haven't retained a tenth of everything I've read collectively. But he's that guy. But he also, is not as street savvy as he is, book savvy. And I'm not calling him dumb. He said, don't tell him. But as he was getting closer to the end of his senior year in high school, my parents would talk about, when you turn 18, you're out. And it was just a tongue-in-cheek thing. And, we laughed a lot in my household, okay? And so we do in mine today. We laugh a lot. We pick on each other. And we did that in my home growing up. We picked on each other, kind of had to have a thick skin, which I think, by the way, is healthy, okay? That you can take a joke. But they would always pick at him of, well, you got to get ready. 18's coming. You got a place to live. And they didn't mean it, okay? They didn't mean it. He thought they did. And so right before his 18th birthday, he had contacted my grandfather, who owned a little property outside of town. And he went and got him a little travel trailer set up that was like the size of this little platform. I mean, it's like a bed. And he's going to have to cook outside. There's no water in it or anything. And he'd already made arrangements and started hauling his stuff, had his clothes out there and everything, until mom and dad found out what he was doing. I said, what are you doing? He's like, moving out. And that's what he just thought, that's what you're supposed to do. At 18, you're supposed to move out. And we had a lot of fun at his expense because he wasn't, smart about it. But I think it's communication that's the biggest deal. I think that you've got to talk to them. If you're wanting them out, I understand some parents, they don't ever want them out. If my baby's here at 37, that's where we want him. You really should kick him out. Talk early, talk often, dialogue. Don't spring anything on them. Set some goals for them, some mile markers for them. And by the way, you have the ability to put pressure Pressure comes from a lot of different things, such as responsibilities, like rent and food and all the things that adults do. Because one of the reasons, mom and dad, they would stay with you until they're 37 is you're free. Your food's free, your rent's free, the water's free, it's all free. Moment that they move out, nothing's free, right? And so you have some influence there in that. I'm just being practical, okay? But those are just some small ways that insurance, gas, all those, there's 1,000 different things that I didn't know you had to pay for until I moved out, and I had to pay for all of it all of a sudden. And so I would even suggest you start some of that gradually, helping them to gradually become adults rather than just, you cut the cord one day and then all of a sudden they've got 37 bills that they've never had before in their lives. So let them start enjoying some of that adulting, maybe even earlier on, and it's not quite so much of a shock to their system. But I don't know if you're noticing this or not, but our culture is shifting constantly as to what we deem to be an adult, okay? It was incredibly common, just even in my lifetime, that when you were 18, you were an adult. That was that adulthood marker. It's not so much anymore. Now they're still your babies. They can be on your insurance, I think, until like 26 or something. I was a couple 3 years ago on my way to Israel, and about lost my mind on a flight, sitting next to a young man who was 28 years old, and we're talking about just life and just stuff, and he referred to himself constantly as, when I become an adult, I will this, and this. And I'm about to lose my mind, and I'm like, seriously, you're 28 and you're saying still, when I become I can't pick on him. That's just part of where our culture has gone. Okay, now you're listening to a guy that I will never bow down to that part of culture. I'm not going to do it. My kids will not figure out that they're becoming adults at 28. All right, so if y'all want to go that route, do it. I just don't recommend it. Okay, start it whenever they're about 10. Yeah. Get a game plan. Start early, start often. So just abandon them a time or two when they're 10 and see how they handle it. See how it goes. Cassie used to run away when she was little. You remember that, sis? She would run away. She says one time, it's more like 12. So we just tell her, hey, make sure you get your chores done.
And don't slam the door on the way out.
And don't slam the door. Always make sure the door's shut. Don't slam it. Make sure your room's clean before you run away. She seemed to be like a boomerang. She came home. Anything you want to give on kicking your kids out the house?
I'd probably tell them to come back.
Yeah, we've only lost one out of the house thus far, and Bets wants him back. I don't, but she does.
He's came home over Christmas, and I was kind of ready to see him leave.
Yeah. We like them in little doses. Yeah. Okay. We have FaceTime, so that satisfies us at this point. Okay. So here's another one. This is a really interesting. How do you not let the sun go down on your anger if you have a late argument or an unresolved issue at nighttime? Do you table it for a later time? You take that one, sweetie. Yeah, go for it.
I would say no. I say you need to work it out. We've had long nights. That's what I would say.
Sometimes you don't go to bed.
Yeah, sometimes we just keep hashing it out. Hopefully to come to, well, and let's be real. If we've argued late, I'm not going to sleep anyways. I'm just going to be mad. I'm going to lay there and be mad. So it's better for me to sit and be mad and talk to him than to be mad and lay there and be ugly.
Sometimes.
Now, there's been times I'm not going to act like we haven't went to bed mad.
Sometimes she'll be mad because I'm not mad.
It makes me mad when he's not mad.
Yeah, when I'm not mad with her. Nobody wants to be mad alone, right? And if I'm not mad with her, she gets upset about that. But for the most part, we have done well with, we're going to have to deal with this before we go to sleep. And that's more her than me, because I'll just, I'm much more prone to just saying, you'll be better in the morning. Let's go to sleep. If she gets worked up, then she just can't. She just gonna lay there and be mad at me, or go in the living room and then be mad at me because I'm not in the living room. And so we fight. Both of us are so different in how we go about arguing. She will say things and then we have long pauses, which drives me insane. And I'm like,
and then I'm mad because he didn't say anything.
Yeah, let's just talk it all over, get it done, and we're just done. It's over with. And she's much more of, let's contemplate what we've said. And we're still yet. We've been married nearly 22 years in August. Is that right? July, not August. We were born in August. I only have one wife.
I told somebody our anniversary was in June the other day.
Well, there you go. So we've got August to June covered. But still, we're and I tried to communicate this in one of our previous ones of these. You're never done with this. There's just this constant dance. We're still trying to figure out how to fight better, okay? And I know you probably have a negative view of what I'm saying when I'm saying the word fight. I'm not meaning that we're, throwing knives at each other, but I'm talking about dealing with difficulties and disagreements and those kinds of things, because she thinks she's got the best way. I think I have the best way. And somewhere in the middle of that, we clash with that and try to figure it out. But and then we submit to God's way. Yeah. But you're just never done. And I would like to be. I would like to think we've got it perfect. And then as soon as I think that, then she reminds me that we haven't got it perfect, and then we got to fight about that. So it's just there's this continual dance with it. And I think sometimes that's where the couples, let me go back to this. The couples that I have observed over the years that, for me, this is the most heartbreaking things that I see. Couples that make it 20 or 30 years in and then divorce. That to me, that's one of the most gut-wrenching things, is to make it that deep into it and then call it quits. I know a couple 5-6 years ago, listen to this, 42 years they were married and then got divorced. Think about that. 42 years. That's unbelievably tragic. Not that year 2 isn't tragic. It is. But think about the investment that you have in that. But here's what I think, that in those scenarios, what's happened, I think that they've been kind of suckered into thinking that, man, after we're in this thing 20 years, or after we're in it 10 years or 30, whatever, we can just find that place where we just coast. And I think they take things for granted. They take each other for granted, and stop working at it maybe as you did early on. And it will always deteriorate. You always have to, it's kind of like your house. If you don't give it some love, that thing's going to deteriorate over time. You have to continually spend some money on it, and spend some time on it, and some love and some care on it. Marriage is a whole lot the same way. Your relationship with your kids, a whole lot the same way. Because you spent time with them, 2 years ago, that doesn't always equate to today. There has to be that continual investment of face-to-face time. And by the way, you don't have to freak out whenever you figure out that you're missing the mark. And I've tried to also communicate that through the whole series. Calm down. You don't have to lose your mind every time you find out something needs work. You can find out, hey, we need to spend more time together. Great, let's just go spend more time together. And you don't have to freak out about that. Or, hey, we missed the mark with one of our kids. You don't have to freak out about that, because that won't help them. Here's what you have. You have today. You might be blessed to get tomorrow. But if you do, that's what you got to focus on. You can't set and spend the thing that will shipwreck you quicker than anything is spend all your time focused in the past on opportunities missed, Man, we should have done that with them, or we should have done that together. You can learn from those things, but man, to set and just, this is what's wrecking me. I'm just telling you, all you're doing is just continuing to drink poison, waiting to, recoup, and you just continue to kill yourself. And so you need to focus on the things that are good, the things that you can help, the things that you can address. And if you do those things, you can continue to build and make things better, stronger, healthier moving forward. But focusing on failures and focusing on past, I'm just telling you, it's a nowhere train that it's just never going to bless you. Okay. Anything you wanted to say on the unresolved? You have unresolved anger? Is that what? No, the son. Did you want to say anything to that?
I did.
Oh, you did already. Okay.
Mine just wasn't as long as yours.
You just wanted to. Okay. So fix it. Yeah, fix it right away.